There are times when you plan, you hope, you try again, and yet Allah gently blocks the way. You wonder why something that looked so right never became yours, why an opportunity slipped away, or why a person you wanted so badly was removed from your life. But Allah, in His perfect knowledge, sees what lies beyond the moment you are standing in. He sees the damage that would have touched your heart, the distractions that would have pulled you away, and the burdens you were not ready to carry. So He protects you, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, by closing a door you were determined to open, and only later do you realize that what felt like loss was actually mercy working in silence. Sometimes what you want becomes so close to your heart that it begins to shape your emotions, your mood, and even your peace. You think about it often, you plan around it, and you quietly ask Allah for it again and again. At that point, the desire itself is no longer just a hope, it becomes a test of whether you trust Allah more than you trust your own understanding. Because true trust is not proven when things go your way, but when they don't. There are moments when your heart convinces you that happiness lies on the other side of one outcome. You tell yourself that if this happens, you'll finally feel settled, secure, or complete. But Allah knows the heart better than it knows itself. He knows how quickly the heart can attach, depend, and forget who it should rely on first. So sometimes Allah pauses you, not to hurt you, but to protect the balance of your faith. When something matters deeply to you, your patience is tested more intensely. You begin to ask questions like, why not now? Or what am I missing? These questions are natural, but they also reveal where your heart is leaning. Is it leaning on certainty in Allah or certainty in the outcome you desire? This is where the test quietly unfolds without announcements or signs. Often, the strongest test is when Allah allows you to try, to hope, and even to come close and then stops it. That moment exposes whether your trust was in the effort, the result, or in Allah Himself. It is easy to say, I trust Allah when things align, but far more difficult when the path closes without explanation. That difficulty is not failure, it is the exam itself. Allah does not test your trust to break you, He tests it to elevate you, because trust that survives disappointment becomes stronger, purer, and more sincere. It is no longer transactional, I trust you because you give me, but relational, I trust you because you know. That level of trust transforms the heart in ways comfort never could. There are times when Allah delays something you want because your heart is still learning where to rest. If everything you desired arrived instantly, reliance on Allah would slowly turn into reliance on outcomes. So Allah teaches you to wait, to breathe, and to remember Him in the absence of what you seek. That waiting itself becomes an act of worship. You may notice that during these moments your dua changes. It becomes less about insisting and more about surrendering. You begin to say, if this is good for me, allow it, and if not, replace it. That shift is not weakness, it is growth. It shows that your trust is maturing, moving from demand to submission. Sometimes the pain of not receiving what you want feels heavier than the desire itself. You wonder why Allah allowed your heart to want something so badly if it was never meant for you. But Allah allows desire to exist so that trust can be exercised. Without desire, trust would never be tested. And without testing, faith would remain unrefined. When you hold onto something too tightly, Allah may loosen your grip by teaching you to let go, not abruptly but gradually through reflection, disappointment, and realization. And in that process, you discover that your heart was capable of surviving without what you thought was essential. That realization strengthens your reliance on Allah alone. Trust is also tested when silence follows sincere prayer. You expect a sign, a feeling, or an answer, but instead life continues quietly. In that silence, Allah is watching how you carry yourself. Do you remain respectful in your words? Do you stay hopeful without entitlement? Do you continue worship without conditions? These moments shape your relationship with Him. Many people lose trust not because Allah failed them, but because expectations were placed where certainty does not belong. Allah never promised to give you everything you want. He promised to give you what is best at the right time in the right way. Trust means accepting that His definition of best may differ from yours and believing it still comes from mercy. There is also wisdom in wanting something and not receiving it, because later in life, clarity often arrives. You look back and realize how fragile your situation was, how unprepared your heart had been, or how different your priorities are now. At that point, gratitude replaces regret. You thank Allah not for what happened, but for what didn't. A test of trust is also a test of consistency. Will you continue to pray with the same sincerity after disappointment? Will you still speak well of Allah when things don't make sense? Will your worship remain steady when your desire remains unanswered? These questions are answered through actions, not words. Allah values a heart that stays connected even when confused. A heart that says, I don't understand, but I still trust. That kind of trust is rare, and that is why it is tested. It places you among those who rely on Allah not for outcomes, but for guidance, peace, and direction. When wanting something becomes a test of trust, the real question is not whether you will receive what you desire. The real question is whether your heart will come out closer to Allah than it was before. And if it does, then regardless of the outcome, you have already succeeded. Not every closed door is a sign of rejection. Sometimes it is Allah stepping in before something reaches you that would have cost you more than you could afford to lose. An opportunity may look perfect on the surface, promising growth, happiness, or relief, but Allah sees what lies beneath it. He sees the long-term impact on your faith, your character, and your peace, things far more valuable than short-term gain. When an opportunity disappears suddenly, the heart naturally feels confused. You replay moments, decisions, and conversations wondering where things went wrong. But not everything that ends has failed. Some things end because they have fulfilled their purpose. Allah may close a door not because you were incapable, but because continuing would have slowly pulled you away from who you are meant to become. There are opportunities that would have demanded compromise, not all at once, but gradually. A small sacrifice here, a quiet concession there, until you hardly recognize how far you have drifted. Allah, in His mercy, sometimes blocks the beginning so that you never have to struggle with the consequences later. What feels like loss now may be protection from regret later. Often, the most painful closures are the ones we never expected. You worked hard, you prepared sincerely, and you believed everything was aligning. Then suddenly, nothing moves forward. In that stillness, Allah is teaching you that effort is required, but outcomes are never guaranteed. The lesson is not to stop trying, but to stop attaching your worth to results. Allah's mercy is subtle. It does not always arrive with comfort or clarity. Sometimes it arrives in the form of redirection that you do not understand until much later. You may not see what you were saved from immediately, but with time, maturity, and growth, the wisdom becomes clearer. What once hurt begins to make sense. There are opportunities that seem good because they promise recognition, stability, or acceptance. But Allah knows how quickly these things can become distractions. He knows how easily the heart can begin to chase status instead of sincerity. By closing a door early, Allah preserves the purity of your intention and protects you from losing sight of what truly matters. When something closes, Allah also tests how you respond. Do you turn bitter or do you remain grateful? Do you assume the worst or do you believe that Allah's plan extends beyond what you can see? These moments shape your character quietly, teaching you humility, patience, and resilience. Sometimes Allah closes an opportunity because it arrived before its time. You may have had the skill but not the strength, the desire but not the discipline, the dream but not the readiness. Allah delays not to deny you, but to prepare you. Mercy is not only about preventing harm, it is also about perfect timing. A closed door can also be an invitation to look inward. When distractions are removed, you are left with reflection. You begin to evaluate your intentions, your priorities, and your relationship with Allah. In that space, growth occurs not externally, but within the heart, and internal growth lasts far longer than external success. Allah does not close one door without opening another, but the new door may not look familiar. It may require courage, patience, or a completely different direction. Mercy does not always align with comfort. Sometimes it challenges you to trust Allah enough to walk into the unknown. Many people only recognize Allah's mercy in hindsight. They look back and realize how different their life would have been had that opportunity worked out. The stress they would have carried, the values they might have compromised, the peace they could have lost. At that point, gratitude replaces disappointment. A closed opportunity can also protect you from becoming attached to something temporary. Allah reminds you that no job, role, person, or position defines your worth. When something is taken away, your identity returns to where it belongs in your relationship with Allah, not in what you possess or achieve. Sometimes Allah closes an opportunity to teach you reliance. When one source disappears, you learn that provision, honor, and success come from Him alone. You stop placing ultimate trust in systems, people, or plans and begin placing it where it truly belongs. That shift is a form of mercy in itself. There is also mercy in preventing you from settling for less than what you deserve. Some doors close because they would have limited your growth or confined your potential. Allah knows what you are capable of becoming, even when you underestimate yourself. By closing one path, He preserves space for something better aligned with your purpose. The mercy behind a closed opportunity is not always visible immediately. But every closure carries a lesson, a protection, or a preparation. When you trust that Allah sees what you do not, the pain softens and peace replaces resistance. And with that peace, you move forward not bitter, but wiser, stronger, and closer to Allah. The heart is one of the most delicate gifts Allah has given you. It carries your faith, your intentions, and your emotional well-being. Allah knows how easily the heart can be affected by repeated exposure to harm, even when that harm begins subtly. So sometimes, before pain becomes permanent, Allah intervenes quietly, removing a situation, a person, or a path before it leaves lasting marks. Not all damage arrives loudly. Some of it comes slowly, disguised as familiarity, attachment, or comfort. You may not even notice your heart becoming heavier, less hopeful, or more distracted. Allah, in His mercy, notices what you have grown accustomed to ignoring. He steps in not as punishment, but as protection, preserving the softness of your heart before it hardens. There are relationships that begin with warmth but slowly drain your peace. There are environments that promise growth but quietly weaken your faith. Allah allows you to experience enough to learn, but not enough to be broken. When He removes you early, it is because He knows how much more your heart would have suffered had you stayed. Sometimes Allah intervenes by creating distance rather than immediate removal. He changes circumstances, alters feelings, or introduces obstacles. You may feel confused by this shift, wondering why ease turned into resistance. But that resistance is often mercy, guiding you away before emotional or spiritual damage deepens. The heart can tolerate pain, but repeated wounds leave scars. Allah knows which scars you are strong enough to carry and which ones would weigh you down for years. So He intervenes at a point you may not understand, saving you from a burden you were never meant to endure. What feels premature to you is precise in His wisdom. Allah also intervenes because He values your relationship with Him above everything else. If something begins to compete with your faith, your reliance, or your remembrance of Him, He may remove it. Not because the thing itself was evil, but because its effect on your heart was becoming unhealthy. Sometimes you only realize Allah's intervention when you compare your life to those who remained in similar situations. You see the exhaustion, the bitterness, or the loss of direction they carry. In that moment, you understand that what you were spared from would have slowly altered who you are. Gratitude replaces confusion. Allah's intervention often feels abrupt because the heart tends to ignore early warning signs. We justify, rationalize, and adapt to discomfort until it becomes normal. Allah does not allow harm to reach a point where healing becomes difficult. He intervenes while restoration is still gentle, not painful. There are moments when Allah intervenes through unanswered prayers. You ask for continuation, but Allah chooses separation. You ask for ease, but Allah introduces change. In those moments, it is not that Allah did not hear you, it is that He heard what your heart needed more than what it wanted. The heart is also vulnerable during moments of weakness. When you are tired, lonely, or uncertain, you are more likely to settle for what harms you slowly. Allah intervenes in those moments to prevent you from making choices driven by exhaustion rather than clarity. That intervention is care, not control. Allah knows that some damage does not heal easily. Certain disappointments, betrayals, or compromises can alter the way you trust, love, or believe. Before your heart reaches that point, Allah may close doors forcefully. What feels harsh at first is often the kindness that preserves your ability to feel deeply again. Sometimes Allah intervenes not by removing the situation, but by removing the desire. What once excited you no longer feels right. What once mattered deeply loses its hold. That change is also protection. Allah frees your heart without drama, allowing you to walk away without regret. When Allah intervenes early, it is because He wants to keep your heart receptive to goodness. A damaged heart struggles to hope, to forgive, and to trust. Allah protects you so that you can continue to experience faith with softness rather than suspicion. That preservation is a gift. You may question Allah's intervention when it disrupts your plans, but over time, you notice how your heart feels lighter, calmer, and more focused. That peace is evidence that Allah removed something that was slowly draining you. The relief may not be immediate, but it is lasting. Allah intervenes before damage reaches the heart, because the heart is where faith lives. Protecting it means protecting your connection with Him. And when Allah safeguards your heart, He is not taking something away. He is ensuring that what remains within you is stronger, purer, and closer to Him. There are many moments in life where Allah protects you without informing you, without signs, and without explanation. You continue walking forward, unaware that something harmful was redirected away from your path. Not every protection is felt, and not every mercy is announced. Some of Allah's greatest favors happen quietly, behind the scenes, while you assume life is simply moving on. You may have wanted something deeply and felt disappointed when it did not work out. What you could not see were the trials attached to it, the stress that would have followed, the distractions it would have introduced, or the compromises it would have demanded. Allah, in His knowledge, removes harm before it reaches you, even when your heart still desires what was removed. There are conversations you were never part of, decisions made without your involvement, and situations that unfolded differently than expected. You may think you were unlucky or overlooked, but Allah knows what would have unfolded had you been included. Sometimes exclusion is protection, sparing you from entanglements that would have drained your energy and peace. Allah often spares you from people whose presence would have slowly changed you. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay, and not every connection is meant to grow. Some people are removed before attachment forms deeply, so that separation does not break you later. That distance is not loneliness, it is safeguarding. There are paths you were eager to walk, unaware of how heavy they would become. Allah knows which roads carry burdens you are not meant to carry. By redirecting you early, He saves you from exhaustion, regret, and long-term strain. You may never fully understand what you avoided, but Allah does. Sometimes Allah spares you from becoming someone you would not recognize. Certain opportunities shape character in ways that are not always positive. They can harden the heart, inflate the ego, or weaken sincerity. Allah protects your inner self by preventing environments that would have slowly altered who you are. There are mistakes you were close to making, choices you nearly committed to, and habits you almost normalized. Allah intervenes through hesitation, obstacles, or sudden changes. That pause is protection, allowing you to step back before consequences settle in. You may never realize how close you were to harm. Allah also spares you from emotional wounds that would have taken years to heal. Some heartbreaks leave scars that affect future trust and relationships. By removing you early, Allah preserves your ability to love, hope, and connect again. What feels like a missed chance is often emotional preservation. You may wonder why Allah allowed you to desire something He never intended for you. But desire reveals the heart, and protection refines it. Through what you did not receive, Allah teaches you reliance, patience and contentment. These lessons strengthen you far more than receiving everything you want. There are moments when Allah spares you from public failure by allowing private disappointment. A closed door early on can save you from humiliation later. Allah values your dignity and protects it even when you do not notice. What happens quietly is often kinder than what happens publicly. Allah also spares you from responsibilities you are not ready to handle. Some roles look appealing, but they carry pressure, accountability, and stress that could overwhelm you. By delaying or redirecting you, Allah gives you time to grow stronger before carrying heavier loads. There are sins Allah protects you from by changing circumstances around you. A path that seemed accessible suddenly becomes difficult. A temptation loses its appeal. These shifts are not coincidence, they are mercy. Allah guards your faith even when you are unaware of the danger. Sometimes Allah spares you from prolonged regret. Had things gone your way, you might have spent years wondering what if in a different direction. By closing one chapter early, Allah prevents a lifetime of internal conflict. That clarity is a gift, even if it arrives through disappointment. Allah also spares you from becoming dependent on people or things that cannot truly support you. When reliance shifts away from Him, Allah gently corrects it. He removes false sources of security so that your heart returns to its true anchor. That return is protection. There are futures Allah prevents that would have delayed your spiritual growth. Some comforts slow down reflection and remembrance. Allah prioritizes your akhirah over temporary ease. By sparing you from certain comforts, He draws you closer to what truly benefits you. You may look at others and feel they received what you were denied, but Allah distributes according to wisdom, not comparison. What suits one person may harm another. Allah spares you based on what your heart, faith, and journey require. Allah's protection often becomes clear with time. Years later, you may look back and realize how different your life would have been. The stress you avoided, the values you preserved, and the peace you retained all point to unseen mercy. Understanding arrives when the heart matures. There are moments when Allah spares you from your own impatience. Had you received something too early, you may have mishandled it. Allah waits until your heart is steadier and your intentions purer. Delay is sometimes protection in its gentlest form. Allah also spares you from becoming attached to the wrong definition of success. By withholding certain outcomes, He teaches you to value inner peace, faith, and character over status and recognition. That shift reshapes your priorities permanently. What you were spared from without ever knowing is part of Allah's constant care over your life. Protection does not always feel comforting, but it is always loving. When you trust that Allah sees what you cannot, your heart finds peace even in what never happened. Delay is one of the most misunderstood forms of Allah's care. When something does not arrive when expected, the heart often assumes something is wrong, but Allah is never late and He is never unaware. Delay is not absence, it is precision. Allah guards your future by ensuring that what reaches you does so at the right moment, not merely the moment you desire. Sometimes Allah delays because your future self is still being prepared. What you want today may require strength, wisdom, or discipline you have not yet developed. If it arrived too early, it could overwhelm you or distract you. So Allah allows time to shape you quietly, strengthening your inner foundation before placing weight upon it. There are delays meant to protect your intention. When something takes longer, your heart is tested. You learn whether you want the outcome for Allah's sake or for personal validation. Through waiting, intentions are purified and sincerity becomes clearer. Allah values what grows within you during delay more than what arrives at the end of it. Allah also guards your future by delaying paths that would limit your growth. Some opportunities feel exciting but carry ceilings you cannot yet see. By withholding them, Allah preserves room for expansion. What looks like a missed chance may actually be space being cleared for something greater and more aligned. Delay teaches patience, and patience changes the way you carry blessings. A blessing received after waiting is handled with gratitude, humility, and awareness. Allah knows that sudden ease can sometimes lead to forgetfulness. Delay ensures that when something finally arrives, it does not replace remembrance of Him. There are times when Allah delays because other pieces of your life are still being arranged. Your future is not built from a single moment, but from many interconnected events. Allah aligns people, circumstances, and lessons together. Until everything is ready, delay remains a form of protection, keeping things from unfolding prematurely. Allah guards your future by delaying decisions that could lock you into the wrong direction. Once certain choices are made, reversing them becomes difficult. Delay gives you time to reflect, reassess, and mature. In that pause, clarity often replaces urgency. Sometimes delay saves you from carrying burdens that would have distracted you from your purpose. Not everything you want will help you grow closer to Allah. By delaying certain comforts, Allah keeps your heart attentive and reflective. That attentiveness strengthens your relationship with Him, which is the greatest success. Delay also teaches you to rely on Allah rather than timelines. You learn to trust His wisdom instead of your schedule. That trust reshapes how you approach life. You become less anxious, less rushed, and more grounded in faith. This inner stability is a form of guarding your future peace. There are blessings that require emotional readiness. Allah delays until your heart can receive without fear, insecurity, or dependence. If given too soon, the same blessing could have caused anxiety or attachment. Allah waits until your heart is steady enough to carry it well. Sometimes Allah delays to distance you from harm that has not yet revealed itself. What looks safe now may change later. By slowing things down, Allah allows unseen dangers to pass without touching you. Delay becomes a shield, keeping your future unharmed. Allah also delays to teach you endurance. Life does not always move quickly, and resilience is built through waiting. This endurance strengthens your character, making you capable of facing future challenges with calmness and faith. Delay becomes training for what lies ahead. There are moments when Allah delays to redirect your expectations. You begin the journey wanting one thing, but along the way, your priorities change. Allah allows you to grow out of certain desires naturally. By the time delay ends, you may no longer want what you once asked for. Delay guards your future by preventing arrogance. When things come easily, humility can fade. Waiting reminds you of dependence on Allah. It keeps gratitude alive and pride away. Allah protects your heart from becoming attached to success instead of the one who grants it. Sometimes Allah delays because what you want is tied to other people who are not yet ready. Their growth, choices, or changes matter too. Allah coordinates lives with wisdom. Delay ensures that when paths cross, they do so with harmony rather than chaos. Allah also delays to show you that your worth is not tied to outcomes. While waiting, you continue to worship, to strive, and to remain hopeful. That consistency proves that your faith is not conditional. Allah guards your future by strengthening this unconditional connection. There are delays meant to sharpen your awareness. When things slow down, reflection deepens. You begin to notice lessons you would have missed if life moved faster. That awareness prepares you to make wiser decisions later. Sometimes Allah delays because He plans to give more than you asked for. What arrives later may carry greater benefit, deeper satisfaction, or longer lasting impact. Delay stretches your capacity so that when it comes, it does not fall short of what you truly need. Allah guards your future by teaching you contentment in the present. While waiting, you learn to appreciate what you already have. This balance protects you from always chasing the next thing. A content heart is less fragile and more resilient. Delay is not denial, it is direction. Allah guards your future by ensuring that what reaches you does so with wisdom, readiness, and mercy. When you trust His timing, you realize that nothing was ever held back. It was simply being prepared for you and for your good. Not everything that attracts the eye benefits the heart. Many things appear beautiful, promising comfort, joy, or success, yet their reality unfolds very differently. Allah teaches us that appearances are limited, while truth requires depth. What looks good often speaks to desire, but what is good speaks to the soul and its long-term well-being. The heart is naturally drawn to ease and pleasure. It wants what feels light, rewarding, and immediate. But Allah, in His wisdom, looks beyond the moment. He considers the effect of things on your faith, your character, and your akhirah. What is good may not always feel pleasant at first, but it nurtures you in ways comfort never could. What looks good often comes without resistance. It flows easily, gains approval quickly, and feels satisfying. But ease alone is not a measure of goodness. Sometimes Allah allows things to be easy because they are a test, not because they are beneficial. True goodness often requires patience, effort, and restraint. There are paths that seem good because many people walk them. Popularity can create the illusion of correctness. Yet Allah reminds us that truth is not measured by numbers. What is good may be lonely, misunderstood, or unpopular, but it leads to peace and stability that trends can never provide. What looks good often feeds the ego. It brings recognition, praise, and a sense of importance. What is good humbles you. It reminds you of your dependence on Allah and keeps your intentions sincere. Allah prefers what strengthens humility over what inflates pride. Sometimes what looks good aligns perfectly with your plans. It fits your timeline and expectations. But what is good aligns with Allah's plan, even when it disrupts yours. Allah chooses goodness based on wisdom, not convenience. That is why His choices sometimes surprise you. There are relationships that look good on the surface. They offer companionship, excitement, or validation. Yet Allah knows how those connections affect your heart over time. What is good nurtures peace, respect, and faith, not constant anxiety or emotional exhaustion. What looks good often promises immediate happiness. What is good builds lasting contentment. Allah protects you from confusing temporary pleasure with genuine fulfillment. He teaches you that happiness fades when it is not rooted in meaning and purpose. Sometimes what looks good pushes you away from reflection. It keeps you busy, distracted, and occupied. What is good slows you down, invites awareness, and brings you closer to Allah. Goodness deepens your connection with Him rather than replacing it. There are opportunities that look good because they offer security or status. Yet Allah knows how quickly these things can become sources of stress. What is good may offer less comfort but more peace. Allah values peace of the heart far more than outward stability. What looks good often requires compromise. Small ones at first, then larger ones over time. What is good protects your principles. Allah does not place goodness in things that slowly erode your values. He safeguards your integrity even when it costs you something appealing. Sometimes what looks good excites the mind, but what is good calms the heart. Excitement fades, but tranquility remains. Allah guides you toward what settles your heart rather than constantly stirring it. That calm is a sign of true goodness. What looks good often depends on circumstances. When conditions change, its appeal disappears. What is good remains beneficial regardless of situation. Allah chooses what supports you in both ease and hardship, not just when life feels comfortable. There are moments when Allah removes what looks good from your life. At first, it feels like loss. But with time, you realize that what remained was far more valuable. Allah teaches you through experience, not just instruction. What looks good often satisfies desires you already have. What is good develops qualities you need but may resist. Allah knows what your soul requires for growth, even when your heart resists it initially. Sometimes what looks good makes you forget gratitude. You become accustomed to it quickly. What is good reminds you constantly of Allah's mercy. It keeps gratitude alive, preventing the heart from becoming entitled. What looks good can distract you from your purpose. What is good aligns you with it. Allah does not define goodness by enjoyment alone, but by direction. He guides you toward what brings meaning, not just pleasure. There are things you may pray for because they look good to you. Allah may withhold them because He knows what is good for you. This is not rejection, it is care. Allah responds to prayers with wisdom, not impulse. Over time, maturity teaches you to recognize the difference. You begin to value what strengthens your faith over what impresses others. That shift is guidance. Allah opens your understanding so that you no longer chase appearances. What looks good belongs to the eyes, but what is good belongs to the heart. Allah trains you to choose depth over display, substance over shine. When you trust His definition of goodness, your life gains clarity, balance, and lasting peace. There are moments when Allah withholds something that would have pleased you deeply. Your heart wanted it, your mind justified it, and everything about it seemed right. Yet Allah chose to protect you instead of pleasing you. That choice may feel painful at first, but it comes from knowledge you do not possess and care you cannot always see. Satisfaction is often connected to the present moment. It focuses on how something makes you feel right now. Safety, however, looks beyond today. Allah chooses safety because He sees how quickly satisfaction can turn into regret. He values your long-term well-being over short-term happiness. Sometimes Allah removes you from situations that excite you but quietly harm you. The laughter, comfort, or thrill may feel good, yet your heart slowly grows heavier. Allah notices the subtle damage before you do. His intervention is not meant to deprive you, but to preserve you. There are desires that would have given you joy but taken away your peace. Allah understands that peace is harder to restore than pleasure is to replace. By choosing safety, Allah ensures that your heart remains stable, calm, and capable of returning to Him without obstacles. Often, Allah chooses safety when you are emotionally vulnerable. In moments of loneliness or exhaustion, satisfaction can mislead you. You may settle for what fills the void temporarily. Allah steps in during these moments, shielding you from choices driven by weakness rather than wisdom. Allah also chooses safety when something begins to compete with your reliance on Him. If your heart starts attaching too strongly to a person, role, or outcome, Allah may distance you from it, not because attachment itself is wrong, but because nothing should replace trust in Him. Sometimes safety means removing you from a path that would have changed who you are. Certain environments slowly shape character, habits, and priorities. Allah values your inner state more than your external comfort. He protects the version of you that stays connected to Him. There are times when Allah chooses safety by closing doors abruptly. The suddenness may shock you, leaving you confused and hurt, but swift closure often prevents prolonged damage. Allah does not allow harm to linger when it threatens to deepen. Satisfaction often feels rewarding because it confirms our desires. Safety feels restrictive because it challenges them. Allah knows that unchecked desire can lead the heart astray. By choosing safety, He teaches discipline, self-awareness, and reliance. Sometimes Allah chooses safety through discomfort. You may feel restless, blocked, or unsettled. That discomfort is a signal, not a punishment. Allah is guiding you away from what could have harmed you quietly. Allah also chooses safety when success would have inflated pride. Not every achievement strengthens humility. Some successes distract the heart from gratitude. Allah delays or removes them to protect sincerity and keep the heart grounded. There are relationships that offer satisfaction but lack respect, balance, or faith. Allah removes them not because you cannot handle them, but because they would have drained you emotionally and spiritually. Safety preserves your dignity and emotional health. Allah sometimes chooses safety by teaching you to let go. Holding on to certain desires may feel comforting, but release brings clarity. Allah replaces attachment with trust, which is far more stable than satisfaction. Safety also comes in the form of unanswered prayers. Allah hears every dua, but He responds according to wisdom. When He says no, it is often because yes would have exposed you to harm you were not prepared for. Sometimes Allah chooses safety before you even realize you are at risk. You may never know how close you were to something destructive. Allah protects you quietly, without explanation, because mercy does not require acknowledgement. Allah's choice of safety shapes your future resilience. By protecting you now, He ensures that you are not carrying wounds that would limit your growth later. Prevention is easier than repair, and Allah knows this well. There are moments when Allah chooses safety so that you do not confuse pleasure with purpose. Life is not meant to be a constant pursuit of what feels good. Allah redirects you toward what builds meaning, strength, and faith. Safety may feel like restriction, but it is actually freedom from regret. Allah saves you from consequences that would have followed satisfaction. Over time, gratitude replaces disappointment as understanding grows. Sometimes Allah chooses safety so that your heart remains capable of love, trust, and hope. Repeated damage hardens the heart. Allah intervenes early to preserve its softness and sincerity. When Allah chooses safety over satisfaction, He is choosing you. He is choosing your faith, your peace, and your future. And when you trust that choice, you realize that what was withheld was never a loss. It was protection in its purest form. There are moments in life when Allah protects you without giving reasons, signs, or closure. Something ends, changes, or never begins, and you are left with questions. You search for understanding, but answers do not arrive. This type of protection is difficult because the heart seeks clarity, yet Allah asks for trust instead. Human nature desires explanations. We want to know why something was taken, delayed, or redirected. But Allah, in His wisdom, knows that some truths would overwhelm us or distract us from moving forward. So He protects you quietly, allowing you to continue without carrying the weight of knowledge you are not meant to hold. Sometimes Allah removes you from harm before it becomes visible. There is no warning, no build-up, no dramatic event. One day, the path is simply no longer open. You may feel unsettled, but that unease is far lighter than the damage that would have followed had you remained. This kind of protection tests your relationship with Allah. Do you trust Him even when you do not understand His actions? Faith is not only belief when things make sense, it is submission when they do not. Allah strengthens your faith by teaching you to rely on His wisdom rather than your comprehension. There are situations where knowing the reason would cause resentment or fear. Allah spares you that emotional burden by keeping the reason hidden. His silence is not neglect, it is care. He allows peace to grow where overthinking would have taken root. Sometimes Allah protects you by altering feelings rather than circumstances. What once mattered deeply no longer holds the same weight. You may not know why your heart changed, but that change shields you from pain that was approaching quietly. Emotional detachment can be a form of mercy. Protection without explanation also prevents attachment to the past. If every answer were given, the heart might remain stuck, replaying what could have been. Allah closes chapters without commentary so that healing can begin without delay. There are times when Allah protects you from people by creating distance rather than conflict. No argument, no clear reason, just separation. That quiet distance prevents bitterness, blame, and emotional scars. Allah values peace over confrontation. This form of protection teaches humility. You accept that your knowledge is limited and that Allah's awareness is complete. You learn that not every moment needs to be analyzed. Some moments are meant to be trusted and left with Allah. Sometimes Allah protects you without explanation because the lesson is patience itself. Waiting without answers strengthens endurance. It trains the heart to remain steady even when clarity is absent. This patience becomes a source of strength later in life. There are dangers that only Allah can see. Paths that look safe may hide trials that would have shaken you deeply. By redirecting you quietly, Allah spares you from fear, loss, or spiritual damage. You may never know what was avoided, but Allah does. Protection without explanation also guards your heart from comparison. If you knew what others faced or what you escaped, pride or sorrow could develop. Allah keeps you focused on your own journey, not on measuring it against others. Sometimes Allah protects you by removing something you never thought you could live without. The shock fades and resilience appears. You realize that Allah replaced dependence on creation with reliance on Him. That shift is protection in itself. There are moments when Allah protects you by not allowing things to make sense right away. Immediate understanding might lead to arrogance or complacency. Allah allows growth to happen first, clarity later. This order protects sincerity. Protection without explanation also preserves your emotional energy. Overanalyzing drains the heart. Allah saves you from that exhaustion by asking you to trust and move forward. Peace often comes from acceptance, not understanding. Sometimes Allah protects you from your own reaction. If you knew what truly happened, anger or despair might take over. Allah shields your heart by keeping certain realities unseen. His concealment is kindness. This type of protection deepens reliance. When answers are absent, prayer becomes more sincere. You turn to Allah not for explanation, but for comfort. That connection strengthens faith in a way explanations never could. There are times when Allah protects you by teaching you that closure does not always come from knowing why. Closure comes from knowing who is in control. That realization settles the heart even when questions remain unanswered. Protection without explanation also reminds you that life is guided, not random. Even when things seem unclear, Allah is actively involved. His protection does not require your awareness to be effective. Over time, this form of protection builds inner peace. You learn to accept outcomes without resistance. You stop fighting what has already passed. That surrender allows healing to occur naturally. The protection that comes without explanation teaches you the highest form of trust. You learn to walk forward knowing that Allah sees what you do not, protects what you cannot, and cares in ways you may never fully understand. And that knowledge alone is enough to bring peace. Not every loss is a punishment, and not every ending is a failure. Some losses are written as shields long before you ever experience them. Allah removes certain things from your life not to weaken you, but to stand between you and harm you cannot yet see. What feels like loss is often protection disguised in pain. When something dear to you is taken away, the heart naturally grieves. You feel the absence deeply and wonder why Allah allowed it. But Allah sees the future clearly while you only see the present moment. That loss may have been blocking you from something safer, purer, or more aligned with your journey. Some losses protect your faith. There are attachments that grow so strong they begin to replace reliance on Allah. When Allah removes them, it is not to leave you empty, but to restore balance. The heart was never meant to depend completely on anything other than Him. Allah sometimes writes loss to prevent long-term regret. Had something stayed, it might have brought years of stress, confusion, or compromise. By allowing loss early, Allah saves you from damage that would have been harder to heal later. The shield arrives before the womb. There are losses that stop you from becoming someone you were not meant to be. Certain roles, relationships, or paths shape identity over time. Allah protects your character by removing influences that would have slowly changed your values or priorities. Loss can also shield you from arrogance. When things are taken away, humility grows naturally. You remember your dependence on Allah and your need for His guidance. That humility keeps the heart soft and receptive to growth. Some losses are shields against distraction. When something occupies too much of your time or energy, it pulls you away from reflection and remembrance. Allah removes it so your focus can return to what truly matters. That refocus is mercy. There are losses that protect you emotionally. Repeated disappointment, neglect, or imbalance can slowly damage the heart. Allah removes you before emotional harm becomes permanent. That separation preserves your ability to trust and love again. Sometimes Allah writes loss to redirect you away from a path that looked promising but carried unseen trials. You may not know what was ahead, but Allah does. That loss blocks a road that would have exhausted or broken you. Loss can also be a shield against settling for less than you deserve. Allah knows your worth even when you forget it. By removing what limits you, He creates space for something healthier and more fitting. The empty space is intentional. There are moments when loss protects your akhirah. Certain comforts make the dunya feel permanent. Allah removes them to remind you that this world is temporary. That reminder draws your heart closer to what lasts beyond this life. Some losses shield you from becoming emotionally dependent on unstable foundations. When Allah removes what cannot truly support you, He teaches you to lean on Him. That reliance brings stability no loss can take away. Allah also uses loss to awaken awareness. When something is gone, reflection deepens. You begin to evaluate what truly matters and what does not. That clarity reshapes your decisions moving forward. There are losses that protect you from repeating cycles of harm. When something ends, Allah breaks patterns that would have continued hurting you. That interruption is a form of mercy, even if it arrives painfully. Loss can shield you from exposure to environments that would have weakened your faith. Allah removes you before compromise becomes normal. That protection preserves your principles and integrity. Sometimes Allah writes loss to teach you resilience. Strength grows through endurance, not ease. Loss trains you to stand firm even when support disappears. That strength becomes a shield in future trials. There are losses that protect you from false definitions of success. When certain achievements are taken away, Allah teaches you that worth is not measured by possession or position. That lesson frees you from constant comparison. Loss can also shield you from ingratitude. When something is gone, appreciation grows for what remains. Allah restores gratitude by removing what had become taken for granted. Some losses protect your heart from becoming too attached to outcomes. Allah reminds you that control belongs to Him alone. That reminder brings peace, even in uncertainty. Over time, the shield becomes visible. You look back and realize how different your life would have been had the loss not occurred. Gratitude replaces pain as understanding settles in. Some losses are written not to harm you, but to guard you. They stand between you and what would have damaged your faith, peace or future. When you trust Allah's wisdom, you realize that what left your life did so carrying harm away with it. Gratitude is usually connected to what we receive, not to what is withheld. Yet one of the highest levels of faith is learning to thank Allah for things that never entered your life. This form of gratitude is quiet, mature and deeply rooted in trust. It comes from understanding that Allah's care is not limited to what you can see. There are moments when you look back and realize how strongly you once wanted something. At the time, not receiving it felt painful and confusing. But with distance and growth, you begin to recognize the wisdom behind its absence. Gratitude then shifts from regret to relief. Thanking Allah for what never happened means acknowledging that your knowledge was incomplete. You desired based on what you felt, but Allah decided based on what He knew. This realization humbles the heart and strengthens reliance. You learn that protection does not require permission from desire. Sometimes gratitude arrives years later. You see how your life unfolded, how your priorities changed, and how your faith matured. What once felt like a missed opportunity now feels like divine precision. Allah kept you away from something that no longer fits who you have become. Learning this gratitude teaches you to release resentment. Holding on to what if questions burdens the heart. When you thank Allah for what never happened, you free yourself from endless comparison. Peace replaces curiosity about alternate paths. There are relationships that never formed, roles you never entered, and paths you never walked. At the time, you may have felt overlooked. Later, you realize how those paths would have demanded sacrifices you were not meant to make. Gratitude grows for the protection you did not recognize. Thanking Allah for what never happened also protects you from envy. You stop measuring your life against others. You trust that Allah tailored your journey specifically for you. What suits someone else may not suit your soul. This kind of gratitude requires maturity. It means appreciating outcomes without evidence and trusting decisions without explanation. Allah values this level of faith because it comes from certainty in Him, not circumstances. Sometimes you thank Allah because what never happened spared you emotional exhaustion. You avoided stress, pressure, or heartbreak that could have drained you for years. Even if the pain of disappointment was real, the long-term relief proves its worth. Gratitude for what never happened also sharpens awareness. You begin to notice how Allah subtly redirects you. You see patterns of mercy instead of random loss. Life feels guided rather than chaotic. This gratitude strengthens patience. When future desires are delayed or denied, you remember past protections. That memory softens frustration and reinforces trust. You learn that waiting or losing does not always mean missing out. Thanking Allah for what never happened deepens humility. You accept that not everything you want is good for you. You allow Allah to lead rather than insisting on control. That humility brings peace to the heart. There are moments when gratitude arises simply from realizing you survived without what you thought was essential. You are still standing, still believing, still growing. That realization builds confidence in Allah's care. This form of gratitude also heals emotional wounds. Instead of replaying disappointment, you reframe it as divine care. Healing becomes easier when meaning replaces confusion. Thanking Allah for what never happened teaches you contentment. You appreciate what exists instead of longing for what does not. This contentment protects you from restlessness and dissatisfaction. It also strengthens your dua. You begin to ask Allah for what is good, not just what is desired. Your prayers become more balanced, grounded in trust rather than urgency. Gratitude for unseen protection reshapes your outlook on loss. You stop seeing absence as emptiness and start seeing it as space. Space for growth, clarity, and better alignment. Sometimes you thank Allah simply because your faith remained intact. What never happened could have weakened your connection with Him. Preserving faith is a gift greater than any worldly gain. This gratitude also builds resilience. You learn that life does not have to unfold perfectly to be meaningful. Trust in Allah becomes your anchor, regardless of outcomes. Learning to thank Allah for what never happened is learning to trust Him completely. It is recognizing that mercy is not only found in what arrives, but also in what is kept away. And when the heart reaches that understanding, peace settles deeply and permanently. One day, perhaps much later than you expect, you will look back and realize that Allah was always guarding you, not only through what He gave, but through what He gently kept away. The doors that did not open, the paths that ended early, and the desires that faded were never signs of loss, they were signs of care. When you trust Allah enough to believe that His protection is greater than your understanding, your heart finds peace even without answers, and that peace is one of the greatest gifts Allah gives to those who rely on Him.